Hi guys, it's Lindsay. Welcome back to The Wandering Reader. Today I'm going to be talking about the long list that has been announced for the Women's Prize for Fiction this year. So at midnight on Wednesday the 7th of March last week, they announced what was going to be on the long list, and I was really excited to see what was going to be on there this year. I didn't wait up until midnight because, you know, who waits up until midnight? I don't know. I know that Dave from Wild Reads did, and then he filmed a video of the long list afterwards. I have to take my hat off to him because, yeah, that's investment right there. That's dedication right there. I just didn't have the same level of dedication, but I'm bringing to you my thoughts on the long list today. And as I did last year, I am going to be reading the shortlist again. So the shortlist is announced on April the 23rd. So I will look forward to seeing what's on the shortlist. And then I will be reading all 6 of those books on the shortlist and reviewing them for you on my channel here. So there are 16 books on the long list, so let's jump into the first book. So the first book on the list is a book called Happy, and this is by Nicola Barker. And the basic premise of this is it's about a place where there are no secrets, no poverty, no war, and everything's out in the open. And the idea is, could you be happy in such a world? So this is a dystopian novel, and I believe that Nicola Barker plays around with the format of the book. So there are different styles within the book, and she plays around with colour and things like that, which I think is really, really interesting when books do that. So I'm really interested to see what this novel's like. Next up on the list is a book called The Idiot, and this is by Elif Batman. This is her debut novel, and it's about a girl who's a freshman at Harvard University, and it's set in 1995, so we've got the whole 90s kind of vibe going on. And Celine, who's the main character, she is Turkish American. And there's this little blurb on the back that says she ponders profound questions about how culture and language shape who we are, how difficult it is to be a failed writer, and how baffling love is. So you got that idea of a campus novel, but also about kind of like growing up in that kind of era of your life, and contemplating sort of language and culture and things. So I think that sounds really interesting. Next up is a book that I do own, and it is 3 Things About Elsie, and this is by Joanna Cannon. This is Cannon's second novel that came out in January this year, and this focuses around 2 main characters called Florence and Elsie, and they're friends who live in this sort of retirement home. And Florence, one of the main characters, is obsessed with the fact that she thinks that this new man who's entered the care home is somebody from her past who she believes died quite a number of years ago, and it's about her trying to find out, I think, whether this person is actually that man that she remembers or not. So you kind of got the themes of sort of old age and how we treat people that are this sort of age, and also kind of like being believed and that kind of idea. So yeah, talked about the fact I'm actually such a big fan of this cover as well. So yeah, delighted that this made it to the long list. A book that I'd never heard of before is Miss Burma by Charmaine Craig, and this was longlisted for the National Book Award, and it's set in Burma during the 1940s to the 1960s, and it follows one prominent Burmese family struggling to overcome war and political repression while trying to build a meaningful life. I've never read anything set in Burma before. I don't know anything about that particular country or its politics, so I think it would be fascinating to read it, definitely from that point of view. A book that I have heard some people talk about is Manhattan Beach, and this is by Jennifer Egan, and I believe this was like a Book of the Month book, so I've seen quite a few people haul it as a Book of the Month choice and then talk about it on their channel. And this she won the Pulitzer Prize for Fiction in 2011 with her novel A Visit from the Goon Squad. And this is a historical fiction novel about an Irish family in Brooklyn during the Great Depression and then during World War II, and it focuses around our main character called Anna, as well as some other perspectives. But Anna is becomes a female diver, and she's trying to help out with a war effort by doing that. And there aren't a lot of female divers, certainly not in that area. I think she's the first in that area, and it's just about her kind of like, you know, trying to fight against the stereotypes and the traditions that women have been placed in at that particular time. And then I believe it follows a couple of other perspectives as well, so that sounds really interesting. Next up is a book that was on my most anticipated releases video, my book buzz video for January to March 2018, and that is The Mermaid and Mrs. Hancock, and this is by Imogen Hermes Gower. And this is another historical fiction book that focuses around two main characters. One is called Mr. Hancock, and he's somebody who owns ships, and he's sent out this one particular ship to go and find his fortune. But unfortunately the captain comes back and basically tells him that he has sold the ship and bought a mermaid for him. And then it also follows this woman called Angelica, who's a courtesan, and I believe the novel's about their two lives intersecting, and then this whole thing about mermaids and things like that. So yeah, I was really intrigued by it when I put it on my list, so it's lovely to see it on the long list, and it makes me obviously want to read it a little bit more. Then I've got a book called Sight by Jessie Greengrass, and this is a debut novel that's, I believe, about 4 generations of women and motherhood. So I switch back and forth between whether I like multi-generational novels or not, so it'll be interesting to see whether I like this one. But I think the fact that it's playing around with ideas of motherhood and parenthood and pregnancy and that sort of idea is really interesting, so definitely give that one a go. Next up was one of my favourite books from last year, and that is Eleanor LaVon is Completely Fine by Gail Honeyman, and this is obviously Honeyman's debut novel. I absolutely loved this when I read it at the end of 2017, and of course it won the Costa First Novel Award in 2017, and now it's been nominated for the Women's Prize, so I'm really sort of getting behind it. I really want it to be on the shortlist because that would just be absolutely fantastic. I've done a full review of this on my channel already, so if you want to go and check out more of my thoughts on that, I'll link that for you. Next up we've got an interesting one, I think so anyway. It's called When I Hit You, or A Portrait of the Writer as a Young Wife, and this is by Mina Kadasamy, I think that's how you pronounce that, and this is her second novel, and it's about a newlywed writer experiencing rapid social isolation and extreme violence at her husband's hands. This is set in modern India, so I believe it's going to be quite hard hitting when it comes to the themes of domestic violence that it's dealing with, sort of male and female roles in modern India, and yeah, I just think that sounds really, really intriguing. Next up is another book that I've read. When this long list was announced, I put on Twitter that I felt quite accomplished, because a lot of these books I'd already heard of, and some of them I'd actually read, whereas last year that wasn't the case at all. So yeah, being on BookTube and being part of the bookish world is just great, because it means that I feel like a more accomplished reader. But anyway, after that ramble, it is Elmet, and this is by Fiona Mosley, and I read this because it was shortlisted for the Man Booker Prize last year and really, really liked it. It was one of my favourite ones from the shortlist. So again, I've done a full review of this on my channel, and I'll link it in the cards for you if you want to go and check that out. But really, really glad to see this on here. I think this is Mosley's debut novel, and it's published by quite a small publishing house called Originals. So it's not called Originals, is it? What's it called? Yeah, JM Originals. No, it is called Originals. Yeah, so really, really glad to see that on the long list for the Women's Prize as well. Another book that I own but haven't got around to reading yet is The Ministry of Utmost Happiness, and this is by Arundhati Roy, and this is Arundhati Roy's second novel, very long awaited. It was 20 years in between her first novel, which escapes me. Where is it? The God of Small Things. I can't believe I forgot the title of that. And then this one. And I learned actually researching this video that she is a big political activist. So she spent quite a lot of that time in between the two novels fighting for different issues that she has a lot of interest in. So I think that's absolutely fantastic. And this one I keep thinking I'm a little bit scared of reading this just because of some of the things that I've heard about it, and The God of Small Things was very experimental in its style, and this is, I believe, quite experimental too. But what I've written down here is that it's a sprawling novel with lots of characters, and it's about the idea of personal is political and vice versa, and it goes from Delhi to Kashmir in terms of its setting. So that kind of whole idea of, can something be personal and political, and you know, like the other way around, like that sort of idea. So yeah, a little bit scared, but I must read it because, like I said, I love The God of Small Things and I wrote my dissertation on it, so must read her second book. The last book that I have a copy of is See What I Have Done, and this is by Sarah Schmidt, and this is a retelling of the Lizzie Borden murders, and I believe Lizzie Borden was put on trial for killing her stepmother and her father with an axe, and it's told from Lizzie's perspective as well as a couple of other perspectives as well. So kind of like a thriller novel, and I bought this a couple of months ago. It's a really lovely edition with orange sprayed edges, so I think this would be quite an easy one to read as well, so try and get round to that sooner rather than later. The next one on the list is a book called A Boy in Winter, and this is by Rachel Seifert. This is a historical fiction novel, and it's about the experience of living in and under the Third Reich. So this is set in Ukraine in 1941, and it's just after the retreat of the Soviet army, and then they're being occupied by German forces, and it follows 13-year-old Yankel and his younger brother Momik, who decide to flee rather than be caught by the soldiers because they're Jewish. And I believe we get a few different perspectives in here, but it's about the people that touch their lives and how they're trying to escape and things like that. So I think that sounds absolutely fascinating, and I can't wait to give that one a go. Another book that I already know a little bit about is Home Fire, and this is by Camilla Shamsi, and this was longlisted for the Man Booker Prize, and this is a retelling of the Antigone myth or story, but it's set in modern Britain. So it's basically about the clash between society, family and religious faith, like the Antigone story was. So yeah, really interesting that it's also being longlisted for the Women's Prize. Second to last book on the list is a book called The Tricked Time, and this is by Kit DeWall, and this has just recently been published. And her debut novel was My Name is Leon, and I read that last year and I quite liked it. I wasn't 100% convinced by the little boy's voice in it, but I thought it was a really well written book. And this book is about a couple of Irish people who meet in Birmingham and fall madly in love, and then something goes badly wrong, and it's about the kind of fallout of that thing that goes wrong. So I have a e-copy of this on my Kindle from NetGalley, so I think that'll be the next thing I read on my Kindle, just because, you know, I don't normally do TBRs that have Kindle stuff on there or e-things on there. I just kind of pick and choose what to do, but that seems like to me like the most logical thing to read next on my Kindle. And then lastly we have Singh Unburied Singh, and this is by Jesmyn Ward, and this is about a young boy called Jojo. He's 13 and his mother's been bringing him up, and his mother is white and his father's black, and his father has been in prison and just recently been released, and Jojo and his mother go to pick his father up from prison, and when they do, Jojo meets the ghost of a boy who wants to tell him his story. So this won the National Book Award, and Russell from Ink and Paper blog has had fantastic things to say about this. It's been getting a real lot of buzz, this book, so I really want to pick it up for that reason anyway, and it's just fabulous to see it longlisted for the Women's Prize. So there you go guys, they are all the 16 books that are on the long list for the Women's Prize for Fiction this year. Like I said, I'm going to be eagerly awaiting to see what's on the shortlist, and I'll be reading and reviewing all of those books for you on my channel just like I did last year. I'd love to have a chat with you in the comments below. What are some of your reactions to the things that are on the long list this year? Did you predict any of them? Have you read any of them? I'd love to have a chat with you in the comments below. Thanks very much for watching, and I'll see you in my next video. Bye.